tonight. Updates about John's farm, probably some updates about mine, depending on how much he's got to share. We normally do a homestead from scratch, but we're not on Greg's channel, so we're kind of just in the Wild West when we come over here to mine. So we don't necessarily have to stick to anything super strict on a topic or whatever. But so John, how's your week been? What you got going on the farm?
It's been a good week. The weather's held out. Cross my fingers. We've had our last freeze, but famous last words, right?
Yep, same here.
Everything's looking good. I planted some pawpaws, God, about 5 years ago, and they take forever to get established. I mean, forever. There's probably better ways to do it, but I got the seedlings. They pop. I grew the seedlings out and then planted them in really awful soil. I planted them in the hedgerow, and that sounds like a great idea, especially after you had some trees come down or whatever. You want to kind of fill up that gap in there. Well, in these old hedgerows, it's nothing but tree roots, and there's
Mm,
nothing. Digging with tree roots is worse than digging in rocks. I swear to God, it's the worst thing because it's not
hmm
like you can just like bust it up or scoop it out. You've got to literally sever the roots, twice because it's like straddling the hole you're trying to dig. So you got to chop off.
Yep.
But it's I got finally got a pickaxe and just started. But anyway, I got those in. Those get back to the pawpaws. Um, I, it's just coming out. They're actually have blooms on them for they're actually
All
flowering
right.
time. So it's like there we go. It only took 5 years. So, if anybody's taking notes, when you grow trees, you do have to have some patience.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's so gratifying to grow willow.
You can
These
go out
other
there and plant 1,000 trees, and it's just like, well, that was easy.
yeah, yeah, but pawpaws they're a little there's I don't know if our audiences know much about pawpaws. They're they're hard to get going because they really don't like direct sunlight for the first couple years because they're an understory tree really when it comes down to it. They're not an orchard tree. You can grow them that way, but you got to get them started in kind of a shaded, somewhat partially shaded environment, and then move them out to the sun or whatever you have to do. And anyway, I got them in the hedgerow. They're growing. They're coming out, and I couldn't be happier. And speaking of trees and hedgerows, then I planted six Chickasaw plums in my hedgerow. I took a pickaxe with that. I just got tired of trying to dig with a shovel, and I just started, like I was working on the railroad, just hammering ground until I had a hole. So I planted six Chickasaw plums, and for anybody who is interested or has not heard of those, they're actually a native plum. They're not a European plum. They're not a Asian plum. They're actually a native plum that actually. Now there's wild plums which are good, but uh, wild plums, but they're kind of spotty and their fruit's not really always the best. You got to really be selective, and it's best to just harvest those out of the wild and not do any propagation with those. But the Chickasaw are, and they get all of their fruit is like some are dark, some are red, some are yellow and red. They're a real kind of mixed fruit tree, at least as far as colors go. They're real resilient. They take the beating from the weather because they're native, right? And that's why we try to. Most homestead people should really focus on native fruit trees, uh,
hmm
because they're much more forgiving. The persimmon, the pawpaw, like a Chickasaw plum. That's what I don't concentrate on them exclusively, but I've got apple trees and I've got other European and slash Asian plums and Asian persimmons and stuff like that. It's not like I do exclusively native, but it's really a great way to get them to. I mean, for a homestead, you can survive droughts. You can survive. They're usually really pest resistant as well. Because it only makes sense, right? You bring a fruit tree from another continent, literally, where they have their pests in their home continent, but you bring them here, and all of a sudden the bugs here are different, and they just destroy some of these trees. And that's why you have to spray heavy with those. If you want to
Hmm.
get in a production environment, right? You got to spray heavy because they're not native trees, and so it can be touch and go. But anyway, I got the Chickasaw plums in, and I did finally. You might be a little disappointed in me. I finally got the mulberries planted today. They're actually were starting leafing out, but I mean,
Hmm.
that bag you put them in, they're still moist, they're still growing,
Hmm.
and it was interesting. How you did those mulberries, right? Because you grew them off of. Did you what's that called? You use a stooling method on those, or how?
No, that I'm doing stooling this year,
Uh huh.
but those were all grown from seed. And what they did was they had an extremely long tap root. A lot of trees that you wouldn't think that would, you would think wouldn't have a tap root do have a tap root. And so they had a really
Right.
long tap root, and they were in a really dry bed. And
Hmm.
so I was able to just take them out. I got those tap roots. I planted all the trees kind of horizontally,
Right.
most
I
of them anyway.
That's what I was saying. It's like I had this big thick root growing horizontally, and then I had
Yes.
tree coming out that way. Which one of them was about this long horizontally, and I had to make my hole a little bit bigger because I didn't, and you've probably told people on your channel a million times, when you're planting a tree and it's got a lot of roots on it, don't jam it in the hole. Make the hole as
Yeah.
big as you can to
Or
accommodate.
prune the root. You're better off
Yeah,
pruning the root than you are
right.
trying to just, crunch it in there.
Right, right. Because that can cause all sorts of problems, and it can swirl around and kind of almost self-girdle itself, and so yeah, so just dig a bigger hole,
Hmm.
and that's what I had to do for a couple of them. But I got those in there. I looked at some of my older my let's see, the poplars I planted last year, and I don't trim around them real good, so they kind of got lost in the weeds on some of them. And I kind of moved the weeds back, and I'm like, oh wow, it's still there. And I took my give up on trees until they're dead,
Hmm.
unless unless you just don't like them and you're like, I hate this tree, I'm gonna cut it down. It's fine, but if you're trying to baby trees, give them a season or two, and they'll start thriving eventually. But that I always just take my fingernail and go, oh, it's green under there. We're good. I was ready to pull it up, because I was like, there's this little stick in the ground about that far. And I'm like, hmm. One of the deer probably got to it, because they
Yeah.
massacred a bunch of it. But yeah, so I was pretty productive with planting today. Got a load of although not necessarily a homestead topic, because people usually don't talk about ornamentals too much on homesteads, because they look nice, but that's about it, right? You can't eat them. But I have some nice rose bushes off my back patio, and I mulched those in. I went and got a yard of mulch and mulched those in, and I got some azaleas I had to mulch. So I'm gonna be mulching the next couple weekends on my flower beds, and it's one of those compromises you have to make with your spouse on a homestead. You gotta have
Hey,
some
the
pretty.
roses at least produce rose hips. I mean, the azaleas not so much, but the roses. I mean,
Yeah,
there's some rose hips.
I
You can use the petals too for, like, certain teas and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well,
I mean,
these
there's
are
some uses.
yeah. Well, these are just to look pretty. Like I said, like I said, sometimes you have to compromise with the spouse and say, we need
Yeah.
some. You know, okay, I planted 100 fruit trees. can I have a rose bush, please? So you need to really listen to that because
Yeah.
we can get carried away with our stuff sometimes. So anyway, yeah. So I did that, and trying to think of what else I did. I got some compost the other weekend. There's a soil yard that has mushroom compost, which
Oh
is real nice
man.
to use, and I got a load of that. And after Frank posted that on our Telegram, I'm gonna be getting me a load of biochar here real soon. I got
It looks really nice.
Yeah, and it's cheap compared to because as people have been following at least on Greg's channel and here too, on the Dual Podcast. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to build a retort, and I've been asking you guys, the easiest, simplest.
Hmm.
I'm thinking of doing it, and then this popped up, and I'm like, although it's really nice to have the skill to learn how to do it,
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
but the thing with biochar, it's I you can always use more, but I mean, it's kind of when you're say planting a tree or fertilizing around a tree for the first time with biochar, it's kind of a one and done type of thing. You don't have to it's not like compost where you've got to put it on every year. So once you get, the majority of your area where you want it with biochar, you really don't have to continue making it yourself unless you have your
Hmm.
expanded property or something. So I'm like, this is kind of one of those things. It's like, yeah, I'd really like to have this skill and it's really a good idea, but I'm like, it's a lot of it's not so much expense making it because it's pretty low budget making it, but it it takes some time and some effort, and
Yep.
and I'm sure you make mistakes along the way and have to do it over, and it's like, do I want to spend my time doing that or just get a load, which is fairly,
Hmm.
I thought, fairly inexpensive, and
And
it's like
very inexpensive.
a yard of biochar. I'm pretty much got my entire homestead ready to now I'm gonna experiment on my pasture and see
Hmm.
how, and I'm gonna take a sample plot and go, okay, let's do, a couple thousand square feet, in a pasture, and just mark it, well, not mark it off, but just know where it's at and go, okay, how is that gonna, you know, outperform the rest of the pasture that I'm not using biochar on? And if I get good enough results, I'll just at the price of the biochar, that's cheaper than nitrogen fertilizer.
Absolutely. Well, and like for me, I'm back and forth on it because it's so darn cheap. And I
Yeah,
figured up the miles that it would take me to drive up there. And if I drove up there, I'd probably get 2 yards of it.
right,
Um, and just because, for one, like if you have chickens or pigs, it's a wonderful animal feed, dewormer, and you don't have to put more biochar in the same spot, but you always can. Terra
yeah,
preta is just feet thick of that stuff.
right,
So I'm probably, and two, I have so much waste material from pine slash on my property.
right.
So I'm back and forth on whether I think I'll probably eventually go and buy some just to,
Mhm.
get a couple of big loads, but then also because I was almost, as soon as you showed me that and I found out the price for it to get it in bulk like that, I was like, well, I'm done making biochar now. But
Well,
then I got to thinking about it and I thought, well, there's a lot of other stuff that I was kind of like, man, I don't know, and I'm back and forth. But I think it's definitely, even for somebody like me who makes it on a regular basis, I don't have to pay anything for it. At that price, it's worth going up and getting some, at least once or twice, just to
well,
get a large quantity.
you make a really good point, though. If you have a waste stream that you're going to be using for it, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
And some people don't. I mean, I have, I got plenty of trees. If I want to chop them down and use them, I can, but, and, I have blowdowns and, but, I'm going, okay, at 65, do I want to, continue doing more physical work or try to take a little easier on myself? And
Yeah.
this is where that compromise came in. I go, yeah, I thought, throw a little cash this way and cut down on some work that I have to do, and I'm okay. It's not like I'm, got tired of rotational grazing and just decided to, put nitrogen fertilizer on my pasture every year, or something like that. But let's see, what else did I do this week? This is almost like the this is this is like
I know what you're gonna say.
this is the Department of Garden Efficiency. We have
Yeah,
to report in every week of what we did this week.
there you
I
go. We
I,
need to
I,
start doing that.
I good thing. Um, I actually did go to a beef producers meeting Thursday night and met some more people, and it's just real interesting talking to other people that don't necessarily do things the way you do, and but it's a good group of people there. You learn something regardless, and so um, I think I may have some a potential uh, future member of our group down in Huntsville if I can talk him into pick him up and take him home uh, on the way down there. Once a month he might be interested in doing that. But it's interesting. He moved from California. It's like he's really enjoying raising cattle here in Tennessee. So, but yeah, that was the major accomplishments this week. Oh, I did set up my seed starting setup with I got a grow light and I got and so I'm using a couple different methods. Grow lights definitely are good, especially the really good ones that are high intensity LEDs are really good to use. Warming mat that
Yep.
the bottom heat on the seedlings. And so that takes care of light, that takes care of warmth. And so the next thing that seedlings need is water.
Hmm.
So what I did, and I saw this on YouTube somewhere. I would give credit if I would remember who did it. But basically, there's a wicking mat that you put in the bottom of your tray that you're going to grow the seedlings in, and
Hmm.
it's just wicking material. And then I told you about this the other last week or the week before, is about using like solo cups, cutting a hole in the bottom and putting some soil in the bottom of your tomato seeds, and then as it grows up you continually pack more dirt around there.
Hmm.
So I set all those on the wicking mat, and then you just have a little hunk of that material that goes over into a dish that's full of water, and when it dries out, it just uses capillary action from sixth grade science, and sucks that into the tray, and it keeps it damp the whole time without it sitting in water the whole time. Because that's one of the problems with some of those things is like you fill it up with water, if you too much and it can't soak it up, and then the soil starts getting mold on it and whatnot,
Hmm.
and fungus, and that's not never a good. Well, it's not horrible, but it's not as good as it can be. So I got those. They haven't popped up yet, but did plant carrots this week in a raised bed because the soil here you can't plant crops that go straight down too well in rocky soil. You can, but I had a raised bed, and I'm just going to go ahead and one of the few things I grow in a raised bed is carrots. So got those in, and I splurged, and just like I guess they might do it for tomato seeds, but for carrot seeds I bought them pelletized, where they've got the clay coating on the outside, because carrot seeds are so tiny, that especially with my bad eyes at my age, it's like, oh, it's a nice little pellet. You just put it in the ground, and
Hmm.
it's got the seed inside the clay, and the clay will soak up all the even more water, and you're supposed to get pretty good germination rates out of it, and be able to keep track of where you put the carrot seeds, because I'm not a well, I shouldn't say a big fan. I don't like thinning out, seedlings if I can help it. It just
Yep.
seems you're murdering perfectly good plants, which you are. So yeah, so that's well, one more thing, and I'm gonna ask the chicken expert a little a question here. One of our hens has a sour craw,
Hmm.
and Deanna's nursing it, but you basically got to massage their craw until they throw up. It's I guess that craw gets something caught in it, or I don't know
Hmm.
what is that, and is there a she seems to have recovered like in 2 days, so yeah.
I've actually never had that problem, and I know I've heard of it. I've had to have heard of it, but that's the first time I've ever known someone that had that issue, and that's like chickens being egg bound. Even though I've kept literally probably, uh,
She was real lethargic, and that's what we thought at first. It's like, oh, she's probably egg bound, but that wasn't the problem. So we went to the other end and found the problem.
because I've kept probably around 30 different breeds of chicken,
Hmm.
and I've probably kept at about somewhere around 1,000 chickens.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
amazing that I've never had one, be egg bound that I've known
Uh-huh.
of. I mean, because normally, if you do have any chickens go missing, it's normally a predator problem. It's not like any
Yeah.
of them die of old age or die of this or that. So that's interesting. I wouldn't. I would be just talking out of my ass if I said anything about like what you might could do because I've never had the problem before.
Yeah, no, I'd never heard of it before, and she kind of self-diagnosed it, and I guess one of the things that would help prevent this from happening, there's more on the preventative side, is putting apple cider vinegar in their water,
Hmm.
especially organic apple cider vinegar that still has the mother and the active fermentation still going on at a low level, obviously when it's bottled, but that kind of helps with the keeping the birds healthy, and issues like this from occurring. So it's an idea. Have you ever fed your chickens apple cider vinegar or heard that?
No, no, I've been really on putting the biochar in their feed
Right.
now.
Well, and I
And
don't
that and
have.
that's a big help of just, health wise. But most of my chickens, man, I've been, and it's either most people would just say that it's luck, because you'll say like with Joel Salatin, with all the experience that he's had with raising animals and farming and everything, and people will be like, "Well, that might work for you there, but it won't work for me here."
Right.
And I think it's just because I've kept chickens for so long. There's a lot of times you don't think of things like or a real good. Well, the mushroom ladies, Lee and Deanna. I went and was checking out their pond. I had dug them a 1,000-gallon pond. They hired me to come out there and do that, and I put in nice water garden that had fish in it and everything. They got goldfish, and I used to keep tons of fish. And I get there one day and I go and I'm looking at the fish and I pick one of them up because, a lot of time when they come to feed or whatever, you can just grab them. You don't take them out of the water, but you can hold them up, in uh, shallow water with your hand just to look at them. Because I saw one of them, I was like, oh man. And sure enough, they had ick. And it had been so long since I had dealt with ick of any kind. I knew
Uh,
that we could, put salt in the water. We tried that, and of course, it was all some of them were really bad infected already, and a lot of them died. And I think after a while, you stop having problems like that because you're just so experienced. You just do all the things like you said, the preventative measures
right.
that you never have the issue.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that's been my experience. And so some people would say, like, oh, well, you're just lucky that you've never had any of those issues. It's like, well, I think I just have all the preventative measures in, but
Right.
I can't even tell you what they are. Like, I just know
Right.
how to keep chickens. And so it's like,
Right.
it's just, I've been doing it for 15 years,
Yeah, one of the problems, and this actually, now that I think of it, might have been the cause of this, is we've been we've been when they free range,
Hmm.
outside of their coop, we have water for them outside the coop as well. And the ducks been getting in their water and they make it really dirty. I mean,
Hmm. Yep.
a duck, you can have a duck in a clean baby pool full of water, and in 5 minutes it looked like somebody threw a shovel of dirt in there. I mean,
Yep.
they just pollute the water terribly. They don't pollute it. They're just very messy when it comes to
Hmm.
water. But it's essential for them. I mean, they need it not just to drink. They need it, for their head and all other parts of the body. But yeah, we haven't really had a lot of sick chickens. None of them been egg bound. Predators got some. Uh, well, and some, and then just typical chickens beating the hell out of each other and attacking. When there's one that's weak or perceived as weak, they tend to.
Yeah.
We got one. It's the oldest chicken. She's just a regular white chicken. She stopped laying. She's old. She's been attacked 3 or 4 times, and we'll have to separate her and nurse her back, and then she'll get her feathers back. And she's been good for about a year or so. And we just noticed they're starting to beat up on her again. She start losing some feathers on the back of her head. They start pecking at her, but it's like, but that's what chickens do. They can be, they have the pecking order, isn't, because they high five each other when they get in their spot. They actually peck each other.
Yeah. How
Reason why.
big how big is the coop you got them in?
Oh, there's plenty of room in the coop. Yeah.
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 Well,
There's.
well, as far as I mean, like the dimensions, is it a more of a square coop, a narrow coop?
Yeah. It's probably about, well, because I built it myself and I wanted to make things easy, and it's 4x8, so I could use a 4x8 sheet of plywood on the bottom of it. So
Yeah.
it's four
Yeah.
by. So yeah, yeah. So I was thinking, it's like, how big is that? And I could kind of estimate, and I'm like, oh yeah, I used plywood
Yeah.
bottom, so I.
Hey, that's the best way to go. Less waste, less
Yeah,
waste.
and that's how I designed it. It's like, okay, well, just it's easier that way. Well, I thought it was easy. It still wasn't easy to build because I'm not much of a craftsman when it comes to wood. Yeah, I mean, you learn, but I mean, you also make a lot of mistakes too. Nothing, a little, cosmetic, things fix it up so it doesn't look like you're an idiot when you got it. Because I got my post out of square a little bit, and here's another and people in the building trades, especially when you're building outdoor shelters or whatever. I used 4x8 posts on the corners. You know, had to get an auger to dig down in it because it's all rocks. And I set the posts, and I'm going, well, I'll just, and I had braces to make sure they were, straight. And
Hmm.
I set them in concrete, and so I'd wait. I left it for like a week or two, and you know,
Hmm.
which kind of took it.
Yeah, with treated lumber, what it's treated by pressure, so it's got all of the treating chemical has been injected into it, and as it dries, it does just like you would have milled lumber, right, with the tree all with all that water in it. And so a lot of times that's where you get the bow, and as soon as it starts drying, it takes off. So you have to like get it and then build it. That's really how they used to do things. Is like as soon as the lumber was milled, you built with it, because if you didn't, and you didn't, stack it properly and put all of your stickers in between it and everything, it bow up on you. And sometimes even when you got enough weight on it and everything, it still bows. I mean, I've milled milled probably, I guess, I'd say probably 1,000 to a couple of thousand board feet, if not more. No, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's got to be more than that. It's definitely more than that. And it's something, if you don't have it stacked right, or if, you leave it out. So if you're going to build with something that's either pressure treated or green, you got to get nails in it pretty quick. Because if you get nails
Yeah.
in it and you've got everything square and everything, man, it just dries beautifully and nothing bows out. It's, all fastened together. Considering that you're not, having a piece of wood that's spanning, 8, 12 feet without anything holding it in the
Right.
middle.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it will. No, but with a 4x8 coop, something that I've realized with a lot of my chickens is, so like a 4x8 coop should be plenty big enough for 8 chickens, right?
Yeah.
So but if you get a chicken that is really low in the pecking order, and like some of the chickens are real mean and they want to beat up on them, I've
Yeah.
noticed that if they don't have, even though there's enough space for them, if they don't have a place where they can go and get, sometimes you just have to say like, okay, that one that's the, one that gets beat up on, sometimes just has to go. Because I used to keep a bunch of smaller pens because I had all different kinds of breeds. And so I'd get that sometimes. But now when you've got either like, okay, so right now I've got a 12 by 12, and the ducks and the chickens are closed up in there because I'm trying to get all the eggs off of them, and I'm trying to get some ducks to sit so that way I can get some more duck meat. But they're all in there, and in a 12 by 12, there are, I think, 10 hens and a rooster, a couple of drakes, and then 14 or 15, might even be 16 Muscovy ducks, hens,
Mm-hmm.
and have no problems with any beating up. There's enough, bodies in there to distract everybody, and there's enough room for everybody to kind of get away from each other. And when I have larger flocks like that, I never have the issue. Same thing
Uh-huh.
with roosters. Roosters, you can have just a rooster and a couple of hens, and the
Right.
rooster won't wear out the 2 hens. I've had,
Right.
plenty of trios. It was fine. What becomes the issue is when you've got too many roosters. So I've had, say, 15 hens to even like 30 hens. And if you've got 2 or 3 roosters, or even up to like, 4 or 5 roosters, they've got those 3 favorite gals. And every time one of them goes and mounts that gal, the other guys are like, well, I got to get me some too. And so there's like 3 or 4 roosters. They're just in and you feel so sorry for these poor little hens, because like there's this big old rooster comes and gets her, and then another one comes in behind him, and another one in behind him. And you're like, well, no wonder you don't have any feathers. And then some roosters have to die, or go somewhere else for a while. Mhm.
Delicious, and but
Oh
they're
yeah.
just small. And fortunately, we have Bantam roosters. We don't have, so there ain't no way they're gonna wear out one of them turkeys, man. Lord, it's like they're just like they can't even mount them. They're so big. And so yeah, so that's but right now we're actually keeping the roosters separate because we're not trying to breed. I mean, we're not raising I mean, we're not hatching eggs or anything like that. They're just
Yeah.
eggs. And, fertilized versus unfertilized eggs, whatever. I mean, I don't have an opinion either way, as long as they're fresh.
Yep.
But well, get on to your side of the project list. I took up the first half hour.
Yeah, yeah. I've been having a lot going on too. I was gonna real quick here. Just going back to one point you had made, want to thank everybody participating in the chat. Nathaniel, one of our frequent viewers, had asked, so pawpaws won't produce in like 50 to 60% shade. They will, and pawpaws are actually like mulberries. They'll produce in full shade. But
Yeah.
like what John was saying, where he's got his, I'm assuming they get a pretty good bit of sun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they're producing in 5 years. Same thing with a mulberry. It'll produce earlier. The pawpaws, I've heard, if they're in like full shade, it takes them about 15 years to
Yeah.
produce.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you're going to be waiting longer on the fruit, but an understory tree. They will do just fine in a closed canopy,
Hmm.
just like a mulberry will. You're just like the mulberry that I have under the pecans. It produces a ton of fruit, but it only produces for about 1 month out of the year.
Uh,
And so if it was in full sun, it might produce, 3 or 4 months or even 6 months. I don't know. But, it's all about the amount of sunlight they get on how fast they'll produce. It'll just be longer and you may not get as many.
yeah. And if you go out into the wild and look for pawpaws, and in our part of the country, you'll find them if you look hard enough. It's just
Hmm.
number one, you need to know what you're looking for. Number two, they're going to be in an understory. They're not going to be. They might be on the edge, of a field, but they're usually fairly well, in the canopy. Um, but what you're mainly going to find is, and they're producing fruit in there, but they're because there's so much shades, they do get spindly and thin, you might have something that's, maybe this big around, but it's 15 feet tall, with fruit on it, because it is searching out for the sunlight. It's just, and the best sunlight is just kind of filtered sunlight for them to, but yeah, they'll produce, and they produce. I have some on my property. I didn't know I had when I bought, because when I bought my farm, I had never seen a pawpaw in the wild, so I didn't really know what I was looking at, and I do this every now and then. I just walk the perimeter of my farm and check out the hedgerow and what's growing, and I'm slowly learning all the trees I have. There's maybe 10 or 15 species of trees that I have, but some of them are trash. But yeah, pawpaws do fine in 50, 60% shade. That's not a problem. That's actually probably, you know, at least from my very limited experience, minor flowering, and they're in the hedgerow, and there's probably, they get early morning. Well, because it's in a north south uh, hedgerow, they get early morning sun and they get late afternoon sun. But during the middle of the day, they're completely shaded in. So
Hmm.
yeah, and they're producing blossoms now. So I'm happy. Anyway, enough about me.
They're, yeah, you're probably right. 50 to 6% shade is probably in the ideal range if you want them to
Hmm.
really be productive. There's a
Hmm.
lot of plants. There's stuff, especially being here in Alabama. Like my goal anytime I plant something that I want to do really, really well is if it's something that's a smaller tree, or a shrub or some kind of plant or garden plant, I try to plant everything on the east side of either a building or, trees, hedgerow, whatever, because really that during the summertime, during your really productive stages, you want that morning sun and on up about to midday. And then when it gets like 2 to 4 o'clock, it's just miserable and the plants
Yeah,
are just baking.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if you can get your trees that can handle that really just heavy all the time light up high enough to where you can plant on the, east side of them and plant close to them to where they'll get, whatever your plants are just getting that morning sun. I've
Mhm.
noticed big differences in that versus something that's planted in full sun or planted on the west side of buildings
Yeah,
or trees.
yeah.
But I've been doing some planting too. I've got this is the year of the poplar. We're getting more poplars in the ground than we are willows. I've still got willows being planted. I started doing a little bit of experimenting on just some pretty stuff. Like I'm planting a little willow arch for the chickens. And so I've got, just a little hoop tunnel that I planted willows and wove them together, and been planting a lot of stuff, getting ready to. We're gonna plant a little bit of a garden this year. And the chickens have been put up, the ducks are put up. We're getting ready for them to start hatching us out some babies, get some more Muscovy in the freezer, hopefully this year. My goal, if I could get them, I'd like to get about 200 of them in there, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get up that much. I've got 15 hens, I want to say, somewhere around in that area that
Mm-hmm.
are producing. And so if I got just 5 of them to sit at a time, and they each produce 10 babies, that's 50 babies
Right.
per clutch or whatever. So if I can get that, and they'll produce a batch of babies 2 or 3 times in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can keep them all in, and you don't have them swimming down at the pond where the snapping turtles can get them a little snack, or to where they go in the pig pen and the pigs get them a little snack. If you've got them closed up until they get up about I'd say 4 to 8 weeks, then
Uh-huh.
they're pretty much bulletproof, and they're already pretty big, and you can let them roam out. So hoping to get a bunch from that, and that's a big focus for this year, is getting more of the Muscovies, because they're really good meat, and we love having them in the freezer.
Now, when you put up the like, and I'm speaking of Muscovies, I guess, in particular. So you leave them in their coop, right?
Mhm.
And so is that to get them to sit, or is that to protect or is that to, once they're hatched out, you keep them in there?
Exactly. So the Muscovies will, you have to try to prevent them from sitting rather than encouraging them to sit.
Gotcha.
So the thing is, though, is they'll go and they'll find an area, and it may not be the safest area. Just like our chickens, they hatched out 2 batches, and luckily I found them when they hatched them out. She came out and was walking around with them, but she was literally right next to the pig pen. And I'm like, it's amazing that all of your babies didn't just crawl into the pig pen and become chicken nuggets. I mean, it was, a miracle. God really wanted those little birds to live, because she was right behind. So I had the black soldier fly larva set up there
Uh-huh.
along the fence where the pigs are,
Mm-hmm.
and she was back behind one of the barrels, because I had it to where it would stay dry in there and everything. So she was back behind the barrels, and she had made her a little nest in there. And the babies, when we went to get them from the nest, they were going in and out of the pig pen, just going through the chain link and up under the wood bottom part that was there. They were just going in and out. And I'm just like, how are y'all not all gone? How did you
They pro-
make it?
they probably got a couple of them though.
Uh, they may have. Now she hatched like 12. So
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know how many they got, if they did,
Mm-hmm.
because she couldn't sit on more than probably maybe 50 at the
Uh-huh.
most.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they were all living. The pigs just didn't notice, and like I said, it had to be divine intervention, because I think it was, I went that more. Oh, I know what it was. It was, I was taking Mondays off, so I went to Starbucks that morning to go get my load of coffee grounds, and I come home that morning, because I go and pick them up about 9, and that's when they had their weekend busy time, and they've got tons of coffee grounds. I go and get them. I came home with a bunch of coffee grounds, and I was going up there to dump them into the black soldier fly bins, and there was the nest. And actually she was already out walking with the babies, and then she went back to the nest when I was there. And so the fact that I was there was probably the reason why none of them got eat.
Well,
Yeah,
my
all right.
question my question is the pumpkin spice latte your favorite Starbucks coffee?
No, I don't. I don't drink coffee, and I'm not a rich white lady. Sorry, I'm not trying to offend any. I'm not saying that all rich white ladies are pumpkin spice latte drinkers.
Hey,
I'm not saying that.
some
I'm
people
not.
have real
I'm
addiction.
not trying to oppress a marginalized group or whatever you call it nowadays. But yeah, no, the pumpkin spice. I've seen a lot of comedy stuff with that, but
People have real addictions, so we have to be careful with them.
that's true. Like, look, all I can do is just pray for you to be healed from your addiction of the pumpkin spice lattes. But yeah, but I love that people love them because I get lots of coffee grounds.
Oh,
I mean,
there you
people,
go.
please don't stop going to Starbucks. Like, I need my coffee grounds.
Yes, support your local Starbucks, and
Yeah.
especially your local
Yes,
Starbucks.
please go and support all Starbucks so we can keep growing our black soldier fly larvae. But yeah, to get back to the Muscovies, I put them up because you want to protect the babies when they're real
Mhm.
small. And I've got a lady that I go and get them from too, because hers they'll hatch out all over the place. Either the pig's going to eat them or somebody else is. And so when she gets them, she'll a lot of times put them up. And then if I go out there, I'll go and get the net and just catch them. And I'm not a real big fan of separating baby stuff from their mothers.
Uh-huh.
But considering in the area that they're in and the fact that probably all of them are going to be snacks, I see it as the better alternative. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm real sentimental and real woo woo with all that stuff. Even though, I mean, I will, like a heathen, get out there and just grab an animal by its neck and slit its throat without even thinking about it. At the same time, I mean, I do have a lot of those things that just kind of gnaw at me, like, oh, I don't know, like, is that the right thing to do with an animal,
Right.
And so I've weighed it out in my mind a lot about that, and I prefer to, if I have to separate them from their mother, for them to actually be able to live and grow up and not, just become turtle food or pig food.
Right.
It's better to do that, and so that's why I'm trying to close them up now. And as we design better coops for them and really get them to where we're rotationally basically grazing our ducks as well, I want to have it to where the mamas, they can go into their little nesting box, and when one of them decides to sit, you just close a little box or like a little door on a box, and they're in there and they've got their own little separate run where they can stay in there for about a month
I
until the
got
babies hatch, and then stay in there for just another month longer until they get up big enough, and then everybody can come back in and integrate with the flock.
you.
But
Yeah.
that's what we're doing right now, is just trying to get them to where they're safe and they can grow up with their mother.
Yeah. We when was that? When we first started raising chickens, and I that's not one of my chores on the farm. So I'm speaking somewhat, well, not secondhand. I was there, but I mean, I let somebody else make the decisions about the chickens. And she went to Tractor Supply, and we got a, I don't know why, either they were I think they were getting rid of chickens or something. I don't know. She came home with about 4 or 5 baby chicks, and we didn't have a a place to put them. We didn't have like a safe place with heat and keeping them safe. And we asked the lady. She says, "Well, what you do, if you got," and the coop we had, they were not on a roost. They were kind of roosting, but they had hay that they would uh, lay down in or get in during at night. And she goes, as soon as the sun goes down and they go to sleep, take one of your hands and just take those babies, lift her up, and stick those chicks underneath it. And the next morning, she's they're going to, and she took care of them. It's like they were her own chicks. It's like, it's the funniest thing about chickens is at night when they just basically go into a coma, really defenseless at that point, and you can, he said, just wait till they're sleeping and just stick the babies up underneath them, and they're fine. They'll stay warm, and from that point on, the hen will take care of them. And I'm like, it worked. It worked. It worked beautifully. But another thing we do, and you know, um, is we incubate eggs. We'll
Hmm.
if especially, well, we did that with ducks, because we didn't know that much about ducks, and they weren't particularly the type of ducks that didn't have really good maternal instincts. Because if the duck doesn't lay on the net, if she don't sit on the eggs, they're not going to hatch.
Mhm.
They're just not going to spontaneously hatch until they at the right temperature for the right amount of time, all that other stuff. So we got a little incubator and started hatching out the ducks that way. So I don't know. I guess you're a little more hands on.
Yeah, well, and the thing about the Muscovies, that's one of the big reasons I got into Muscovies is because I'm tired of incubating. I don't incubate anymore,
Right, right,
because they're just it's. I mean, all right, power goes out. The
right.
Muscovies ducks body temperature is still the same temperature.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a
They
great point. Great point.
they tend to now you don't have as much control as you would with an incubator,
Sure.
but at the same time, all right, unless you are producing, say, meat chickens and you're wanting
Mhm.
to hatch your own meat chickens, I really see like there's no downside to having the Muscovies versus a an incubator. So
Mhm.
like with the Muscovies, their gestation period is 35 days. So they are the longest of
I was gonna
all
say
the birds.
long time, yeah.
So if you want to hatch turkeys underneath them, you can hatch turkeys. If you want to put geese under there, hatch out some geese. You can do ducks, you can do chickens, all of them. Like with the chickens, they're only 21 days. So if you
Right.
put a bunch of chicken eggs up under a Muscovy duck, she'll get they'll start hatching. She'll be like, oh well, she'll be like, well, this is early, and then she'll just take care of the baby chicks. That's actually we had one that was sitting in an oak tree, but something happened with the storm and she abandoned the nest,
Uh-huh.
and she had some chicken eggs under there, and I was more than likely, when the chicks hatched out, going to take them away from her because she had some of her own eggs under there too. So I was afraid that she might abandon the nest because they would hatch, 2 weeks earlier
Mm.
than what the other babies would hatch. And so she wasn't going to sit with 2-week-old chicks on a nest. She would have
Right.
left the rest of them because it's like these babies have got to get out and eat.
Right.
Um, so we were going to, just let the chicks hatch. And as the chicks hatch and they dried off, just take them out. So that way she would continue to sit on the nest.
Right.
That in theory that should work, but now I'm more of a like whatever they're going to hatch, it all needs to be the same species under there,
Right.
just because of the different hatch times.
Right.
But that's our big thing right now. We've got tons of eggs. We've been eating a ton of Muscovy eggs, and they produce about anywhere from 80 to 100 a year, and they'll produce on up until they're about 8 years old. But you get it in big flushes, so you'll get a flush in the spring and then some in the summer, in the fall, kind of. And that it's not near as productive as laying hens on the egg side. But as far as eggs and meat, and being an incubator that you don't have to worry about power and
Right.
humidity and everything else, they work out really great. And yeah, it's pretty much just keeping them from sitting rather than encouraging them to. So yeah, we've got some stuff planned with that. Other than that, one thing that I was going to mention on here, which I've got a lot of things, Elon the Nazi wouldn't be able to fire me, I don't think, any week. We got some cover crop. I know you did some cover crop, but you did more of an annual, I think it was, and you crimped it.
Yeah.
You did
Yeah.
the wheat, or I'm not the wheat,
Right.
the rye. Yeah, the rye. But we did red clover and hairy vetch, and I've been feeding that to the pigs. It was so funny because I planted the hairy vetch in late fall, and it kind of grew real slow all winter, was just there. And now, since the temperature has warmed up, it is just a sea. It's like an ocean of hairy
Yeah.
vetch out there. And I can just go out there and just
Mhm.
take huge handfuls. And so I want to say that hairy vetch is something like 20 to 30% protein. So it's a real
Yeah.
comparable
Yeah.
feed for stuff like, pigs, chickens. Can't give it to my sheep, and you can't give it in large quantity to other animals because there's some issues with it, kind of like with comfrey. It's like it's perfectly safe for them, but you just don't want to make it all of their diet.
Right.
Probably something like a third, like you would with comfrey. But um, the uh, the hairy vetch is doing great. The clover's doing great. Been harvesting some of that. I've got my tank here. It's full of just all kinds of pond plants. I've started seeding little ponds, and little water containers and stuff. Because like you, I've got my fingers crossed that we don't have any more frost.
Yeah.
And I've got some water hyacinth and stuff like that that's kind of frost sensitive, but it's an excellent feed for the ducks and the chickens and everything else.
Mhm.
So I'm just like, as I have to, because I've got just a mat here in the tank. And
Yeah.
for the little mosquito fish and other stuff that I got in there, I have to keep the top clean somewhat, and it's way too full. And I've been able to give the ducks like a treat every week and, all throughout the winter. And as we're starting to warm up, I'm taking out just little handfuls every day and throwing them in places. So that way, if we do get a frost, no big deal. I'll just reseed everything again. But just as
Mhm.
I go to try to get a head start on everything, because the quicker you can get it out and get it growing, especially with that water hyacinth, if you can get it started early enough in the year, you will have so much you won't know what to do with it, and it's
Yeah.
it's just incredible thing. Also, another thing that's a leafy green that's kind of comparable to soy, and but it doesn't come with all the estrogen crap.
Right.
But
That's
yeah,
cool.
that's some of the stuff. I would talk a little bit about what me and Greg did over the weekend. We spent the night in the cabin on Friday and worked Saturday.
Uh-huh.
um but I figure I'd probably let him come on for next time because that's a
Yeah.
pretty long topic, and we're getting close to an hour here. So,
Yeah. Nope.
but yeah, we had a pretty good week. It's going to be a good week this week, and like I said, and like you said, got them fingers crossed, man, for no more frost, no
It,
more frost.
it'll be one of the better springs if we don't get another frost. It'll be
Yeah, it will.
much, much, much better because I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years, it just seems like everything starts opening up, and the mulberries start coming out, and then the last freeze comes and knocks them back, and you're just like, or my plum trees, or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
It doesn't affect the pasture, but still slows things down. Thing about hairy vetch, though, it's great, and this is the time of year it really explodes. But but once it starts getting really warm,
Yeah,
it's done for the year. It
yeah,
starts. It makes their seeds, them little snapping seed pods on their stem, and they're done. But they're a great legume. They're great. I don't have near enough in my pasture, but that's okay. I got a ton of clover and everything else.
yeah,
But I see some every now and then, and I'm like, oh, that's hairy vetch, because it's not something. You don't see it growing other than in a field somewhere. It's not something
hmm,
gonna pop up in your yard or anything like that, not
yep,
normally, I think, unless you seed it, and that would be
yep,
the time. But it's a great, if you've got it established, and I'm speaking of a pasture, it's really good because it's really high in protein, and it comes out early, it comes
yeah.
out before almost anything else.
That's
Uh,
one of the reasons I wanted it was just because it is like that early spring, and
yeah.
in the early spring, it's really hard to find something that's like that. That's really high protein.
Right.
That's real, and man, you get like some of your animals on it when they're getting ready to produce eggs and have babies and stuff. You get flushes of that in the spring. It's really good because by summertime everything else is in full production. And
Yeah.
so I'm probably going to try to collect some of the seeds from this hairy vetch because I'm kind of treating it like an annual. I don't want it necessarily to take over any places. If it's in some areas that are I'm not messing with, and it just comes back every year, great. But
Right.
as far as it being in the garden spot and everything, I'll probably smother it out, or may not. That may not be a garden spot anymore. It may be just a hairy vetch patch, in between the trees. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good for the pigs. Been meaning to drop a video about it here soon because I've got the coonies, and they tend to graze a little bit more. They're not
Mhm.
full grazers like people say. People are like, "Oh, you can just turn them out like cattle." It's like they're still monogastric and more like a
Yeah,
human than a cow.
yeah,
So it's like, yes, they can get a lot of stuff from greens, but it's not everything. Well,
yeah.
anyway, we're at an hour. Man, we just went wild. We touched every topic, but hopefully everybody enjoyed it. If you're watching
Yeah,
the video after the fact, please leave a like. If you made it through an hour of us, I mean, first of all, congratulations. And then
def
leave a like, leave any comments for questions, subscribe to the channel. John, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at?
yeah, the only X, and I'm Soul Survivor 78. Farmer John is my handle. So if you
Yeah, well, and y'all know where I'm at, Hideaway Homestead here on YouTube. You can always email me at hideawayhomestead@gmail.com. And I'll make sure, since we don't have Greg here to shout him out, go check him out on the Tinker Tribe. I'm subscribed to his channel, my channel, so you can just go to my subscriptions and find it. And also Take the Ride. He's got his channel of his health journey. So y'all go check those out. Appreciate all y'all coming out and hanging out tonight. Thanks, John, for joining in on the conversation and bringing all of your projects. It was a good chat tonight. Uh, y'all have a good night. Yeah. Here.